Reading too much about spirituality may actually be not good for your spiritual progress and hinder your own spiritual development. Now, I've seen this time and time again, and more so the academic types, where they are the ones that are able to quote the most amount of authors that are spiritual writers, and they have a very strong egoic attachment and complex into being a spiritual person. However, these are also the type of people that cognitively they have a very strong understanding of spirituality. However, they don't have the embodiment that is required to attain any level of spiritual cultivation. What I found is that when one reads too much, they come into spiritual training with their heads full of ideas. They are attached to specific outcomes. They are looking at specific words and jargons and a lot of these terms that's being thrown around in the spiritual world, whether that's microcosmic orbit this and Shakti this and get your Kundalini this. And there's so many different ideas of what spirituality is. And they're almost seeking and trying to grasp these experiences and being attached to all the experiences that they would have because there's so much fantasy that's built up through the books that they read. So I would actually encourage for beginners, especially those who are coming into the art of chi training, to come with a beginner's mind. And oftentimes that means you don't want to be doing any sort of reading, and the less you know, the better. The students that are almost coming out of this in a state of childlike curiosity, not really knowing anything, and so they're able to receive the transmissions and the insights in class with a completely open mind, and the full wisdom and the full transmission of what is being provided is integrated into the student, as opposed to someone who's constantly filtering out the teachings based on their preconceived notion of what spiritual cultivation should be. I'm saying this from personal experience because I've been both, right? Certain teachings I've had a lot of built-up expectations for, and because of that I was very let down and I didn't feel as connected, whereas others I came in with a complete open mind, not really knowing what I'm getting myself into, and oftentimes these are the teachings that I get the most out of because of that paradigm shift. So for students at the beginning stages, what I recommend is you want to approach spiritual cultivation with the 90-10 rule. So 90% of your attention, energy, and focus should be actually on the training itself. Within the Art of Chi program, we break down the causation chain of how to reach certain states and what type of training that's required to reach there. And the 90% of the time you should spend on any spiritual activity is actually doing the work. It's doing the cultivation practices and the different training mechanisms in order to get you into these heightened states of awareness and in these embodied perspective. And then you might want to spend 10% of your time building cognitive structure around the experience itself, understanding logically the framework of how to achieve each state, as well as perhaps doing a bit of research on what are the right words to express your experience, because the vocabulary that we're given in society in a 3D existence often doesn't quite encapsulate the spiritual realm. So we need almost different words and different ways of expressing. You want to dive a bit into specific books so that you can vocalize these experiences. However, you don't want to get more framework than you can actually practice. Now, as you continue down the spiritual path, the more and more embodiment and the more experience that you've collected and that you've integrated within your own spiritual progress, then you can dive into different frameworks should that be your path. And for many, that's not. For many, they can just sit in the cave, keep practicing what they're taught, and they don't need to know more, and they don't have that curiosity. And in fact, I would say curiosity itself and just knowing all of these things is actually quite unnecessary. And the most straightforward path towards enlightenment is detachment, and it's detaching a lot from that curiosity as well. However, like some people, that's the life path that they want to take is more on an intellectual embodiment and the understanding of various frameworks and how they connect, but less so on an academic perspective and more so on an embodied mystical perspective. And for that, then after maybe putting it in anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 hours into your own personal cultivation, then you can start dabbling more into different literature and different books that's written about the topic of internal alchemy. But before that, I strongly encourage beginners to just refrain from going deep into different alchemical texts, different grimoires, different mystical traditions, Buddhistic traditions, all of these things. It's going to overwhelm your mental body, and it's really going to prevent you from actually getting clear insight and deep, profound experience in your own practice. So as a beginner, you don't really need any of this. If you have any questions about the intellectual exploration of your own spiritual practice, as well as any book recommendations, drop us a comment below and follow us for more spiritual guidance and at Wisdom Tree. Take care now.